All right, so great news. We have the gauge working. That took quite a while to figure out how to do the wiring. I think for the people who have the AEM gauges, the wiring is pretty straightforward. This one took a little bit of experimentation, but just as before, let's go to the bottom here and check out. This is the gauge, by the way. I love the color. But I'll show you the features of that later. Let's go ahead and take a look at what our wiring was. So when we left off, I had mentioned to you that we connected to fuse number 1 with a 7.5 amp accessory fuse, and we matched it with another 7.5. You are also going to tap the, let's see which color this is. So for the ProSport gauge, the white is going to go to fuse number 1 with an add a fuse connection. You're going to take the original 7.5 amp fuse that was in here, take it out, replace it with a different 7.5 amp mini fuse, and then add another 7.5 amp mini fuse on top of that. Because remember, each of these holds 2. So each of these holds 2 7.5 amp mini fuses. The bottom fuse is going to power the original equipment that was connected in here. The one on the top is going to power the accessory, which in this case is the gauge. The next one is the, let's see which color this was. This is the orange line here. Okay, so orange is here. I actually routed this up to the headlights, the low beam. I think this is the right low beam. And what I did was I took out the old 10 amp fuse that was in there, and I replaced it with a brand new 10 amp fuse and put it at the bottom. And then on the top, I put the 7 amp fuse, which is for the accessory gauge, which is our boost gauge. And then the last one that I had to figure out was where to get the constant power from. I plugged it into a number of places and the gauge would not turn on at all, but finally I found a blank, unused fuse, and it is fuse number 20. So fuse 20 is right there, right to the left of the green one. So the green one looks like it says 20, but that's actually just the amps. That's not actually fuse 20, that's fuse 21. To the left of that is fuse 20, and that is an open spot with the 2008 Civic Si. So I put on the top of the add a fuse a 7 amp fuse, and the minute I plugged that guy in, the gauge turned on. So that's the layout of my fuses, just so that you understand what I mean by which one goes on top, which one goes on the bottom. This is the diagram. This is what's getting plugged into the panel. So the original fuse, you're going to match whatever fuse number that was with a brand new one that comes with your kit. So as I mentioned, this is the ADA circuit. It comes with a bunch of these. You want to match whatever the factory fuse was in the bottom here, and find the same amperage, the same amps in here, and plug that in at the bottom. And then the fuse on the top for all 3 connections are always going to be 7.5 amps, and that's the accessory. And that is going to power the boost gauge. And you need to make all 3 connections in each of those spots that I pointed out to you in order for the gauge to turn on. I just went through all the features of the gauge to make sure that everything works. So the reason why they make you do 3 connections is because they want the ability of the gauge to power down when you turn off the ignition. So I'm going to turn the key and let's watch what happens to the gauge. Okay, and our gauge turns off. That's the point of having the white wire. The point of having the orange wire is to provide differentiation in brightness between daylight and sunlight. between nighttime and daytime. So usually during the daytime, your headlights are off, as mine are, so the gauge will remain at a brighter setting. The minute I turn on my headlights, you'll notice that the gauge will get dimmer. And it dimmed down because now my headlights are turned on and you don't need to have the gauge as bright. So that's the point of the orange wire. And of course when we turn it off, the gauge turns brighter. The point of the constant power, I'm assuming, is just to provide the actual power to the unit. I don't know if that's correct, but I do know that this whole gauge will not turn on unless you have that red one powered on. And then, of course, the black one is connected to our ground, which I already showed you guys earlier. So, it took a bit of experimentation, but knowing what I know now, this is a pretty easy setup. We're going to go ahead and tuck in our wires and replace the panels. I have an AFR gauge that's going to go to the right here, but I need to wait to have an accessory that I can use to add a bung to my downpipe, so that way I can put the sensor in there. But for now, I'm pretty happy with the way this gauge looks. I think it's absolutely beautiful. Few features with the ProSport, although I would recommend just going to YouTube under the Mach 5 Motorsports channel and looking for their ProSport Halo gauge demonstration, which is pretty good. But you can change the colors with this by touching this touchpad here. You also have the ability to set peak boost, which means that you can set this peak boost at any level on the gauge, and when it reaches that peak boost, a sound will come on to let you know that you've reached the maximum boost. You can also adjust the brightness settings for daytime or nighttime. There is a adjustable screw on the back of the gauge that you can use to zero out the PSI if you are at a higher altitude. So I haven't tried it with the car yet. I'm going to make a video later on of a quick run with my new data log that I was sent today, and with the boost gauge connected, and we will see how it works. But so far I'm pretty pleased with the installation. It did take a while to get to learn, but certainly nothing impossible. Alright, I'll check back with you guys when we have everything cleaned up, and we'll go for a drive.